Hello, I'm Douglasium, and I'm gonna do something kind of different today. So I did really like doing my arcane analysis, even though I do have some thoughts about the finale. But for now, what I'm just gonna start doing is I'm probably gonna start releasing an analysis about the media and stuff I like or dislike for various reasons, like semi-weekly based on like my mood or what I'm thinking about. Because I've been getting a lot lately that people like the way I think, or they they find my perspective interesting, and some people have also just said my voice is nice. But either way, I'm just gonna start talking for 20 minutes about stuff. So today, also these aren't gonna have subtitles. I want to be inclusive and include and consider disabilities in my stuff, but the scripted, first of all, stuff, this is unscripted. It's way easier to subtitle stuff with a script because I can copy and paste most of it, so it's way faster. But also, I just don't know how many views these are going to get, or if it's worth sinking time into, because these are supposed to be relaxing and very simple and easy to pump out, like borderline the same day pump out. So, if someone wants to sit down or send me subtitles or something to input into the YouTube video, I would be happy to do that. Or if these get enough views, but if not, I don't know. We'll have to just see what happens. So I am trying to keep the audience in mind, but I'm only one person and I don't have enough money to like hire subtitlers or anything. But there's also no conversation to be had about accessibility in relation to capitalism and the internet at large and how different websites handle it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Blue Eye Samurai. Is it Blue Eyed Samurai? Blue Eye Samurai. Let me double check. It's Blue Eye Samurai. So I'm doing this because I wanted to get my thoughts across to a friend recently who put me onto the show. So I really was putting it off because there was a Yasuke anime that came out a while ago, and I went into the Yasuke anime expecting more of like a historical drama, but it ended up being more of like a mech fantasy thing, and I tried to keep an open mind, but I don't think it was terrible, it just wasn't hitting though, for me, that itch I wanted. I really want there to be a... Hold on, someone's calling. This is the problem with doing these things live. I mean, not live. On the offhand is that sometimes people call me in the middle of them. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about Yasuke. So, Yasuke anime was a bit of a disappointment, and then Yasuke shows up again not much later in the year as a character in Assassin's Creed. There's a bunch of, basically how the fans react, some of the fans reacted maybe, annoyed me. There was a lot of blatant racism and attempts of whitewashing. Because, I mean, okay, some people are like, how are you whitewashing when it's Japanese, when it's like about a Japanese place? And I mean, people won't flinch an eye, like there being like a white person in like the middle of like I guess medieval's not the right term, in the middle of like medieval Japan, or even if it makes no sense or less sense. But when there's a black person there who's brought over by slavery or something, suddenly everyone's like, oh, it makes no sense that they'd be there. So suffice to say, I was kind of because of that and some personal reasons, I was kind of just like burned out on a lot of that stuff. And also, I really just didn't want to watch a show about a white savior, or maybe a potentially half-white savior running around. We'll get back to that point in a moment. So, but what changed my mind is basically like a friend recommended this to me, a very specific friend, and I'm partially making this video so give her my thoughts about this. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll give it a shot because I'm still waiting for that perfect Yasuke anime. I'm also just kind of picky about my Japanese stories because Japan has a very complicated history, to say the least. So I think you need a very careful balance of like, yes, it's easy to critique white colonialism, but some people go to the point where they start critiquing, like they start like basically lionizing Japan, like Japan's like this glorious imperial past, or ignoring certain atrocities, and it basically becomes like, I don't know, like almost like propaganda-ish. But this person recommended it to me, and I was like, okay, I hope it's not just like a white person running around show. Because okay, so my fear was that before watching this show, my fear was, what put me off was the idea that it would be like this half white person running around basically, and then all these Japanese people would be the bad guy because they'd be like, they were racists who couldn't handle the whiteness of this character. But then this random person who has like a foreigner dad or something, or is half white, would basically like put them all in their place, like show them the power. This white person would do all the like the having the thing, showing them the power of diversity, or not judging other people, even though even though I think there might be better stories that could do that. But, but, okay, I know some people are probably already tensing up and getting ready to like debate me, but I finally decided to give the show a watch. I sat down with my sister, and I was pleasantly surprised. So, why was I pleasantly surprised? Why did I like this so much? Let's get into that. First things first. It seems like the main character, I think her name is Akemi. I need to double check. Also, I'm only on episode 2, by the way. Each episode's like an hour long, though, so it's like basically like worth 4 episodes in any other TV series. But I'm only 2 episodes in, so my opinions are subject to change here. Okay, it's fucking Mizu. Akemi is the name of the Lord's daughter. So Akemi is the biggest thing that caught my attention immediately was that Akemi. It's implied that Akemi's mother is basically okay. Trigger warning, massive trigger warning for sexual assault and graphic content. So I'll give you like a little bit of time to close out if you don't want to hear about that. Okay, so it's massively implied that Akemi's mom was actually raped by by her dad, who was a white guy. And it's not like I like rape, but what immediately made the stand in my head is this story's already telling us something very interesting. Because usually in mixed race stories, both members of the couple are basically perfect, and then society around them is what is flawed. So, for example, let's take this. Since I'm black, I usually use black as a reference. So, let's say you have like the most generic story of like a white guy meets like a black woman or a black slave or something, and they get married. Usually, there isn't much of a critique, if any, about for example, the white guy in the relationship. Does he ever do any microaggressions? No, he treats her like a queen, a princess. And even despite the power dynamic, there's never any doubt that he cares about her or is doing the right thing or has her best interests in mind. And their love is true, but at the end, society can't handle them. And usually society ends up, in the good endings, they just have to learn to deal with society. In the bad endings, society like lynches one of them. And it's just like, oh, they were just too good, but society couldn't handle them. And to be fair, that story does have its place or has its points, but that's just the most common version of the story I've seen, so I was just a little bit tired of it. That, as I mentioned earlier, is also like tired of a potential white savior story. But the fact that the story starts off with such violence, and also when we see a flashback of Mizu's mom giving birth, it uses horror imagery. But the fact that it starts off that way already sets it apart from like most of the stories, in my opinion, because it's not just. Would have been easy just to have like, oh, Mizu and her dad were just like they were just chill people, and then the backwards Japanese society couldn't handle them, and they made her mom commit suicide. But by handling it in the way the show does, is actually tackling colonialism and white supremacy too. And Mizu as a product of that, as someone who didn't ask to be born, but is born that way and is now subject to it. And it's not to say that all the Japanese characters are suddenly in the show who are being like racist are suddenly like, oh, they are correct. It's that the show has a lot more nuanced approach in the sense of the relationship that Japan had with Europe and the violence or colonialism in terms of the goals of the white people in power, right? So Akemi's about to kill like these four hidden white people in Japan. Presumably one of them is her dad, and so far as of episode 2, we've only seen one of them. It's like this redhead guy, and he clearly doesn't care for Japanese culture. He seems to consider painting like boring or stupid, and he hates that he had time to paint. He doesn't like being on the island. He considers it a miserable place, and it's very interesting that the body, what was a flesh seller? He's the flesh collector or flesh seller, who is Japanese, collecting like all these women basically. And we learned that the reason he's collecting these women basically just to basically sell off to this guy, to satisfy this guy and his sexual urges or whatever power he wants to influence over Japan. So to me, it's also interesting in that how it portrays like how white colonialism and supremacy is interacting and overlapping with Japan and the sexism that's already present in Japan, especially the treatment of characters like Akemi, because Akemi, she's totally right to be pissed with how her dad's treating her, But and her dad doesn't give her enough credit because she is like a fucking wordsmith. She runs circles around basically anyone in terms of whenever she's actually trying to manipulate, or I mean, I say manipulate, it makes it sound bad, but like whenever she's trying to push something in her direction, like trying to get her dad to not sell off to some random asshole, she basically runs circles around him and knows all the right strings to pull to make him like, oh, but this other guy who he doesn't know she's already with, this other guy is so honorable and never lost a fight. Her only problem is that she glazed her boyfriend a little too hard there, and then he ran off to go get his honor back. But so there's okay. This is what happens when I don't have a script. But hopefully you can see what I mean. There's a lot more nuanced conversation happening about the interaction between white supremacy, colonialization in the existing Japanese culture, and maybe the prejudices both the white people and Japanese people have towards each other and the world around them. Which to me makes the story a very unique and more nuanced than just like, oh, there's this nice mixed race couple, and then the backwards Japanese society couldn't handle it. They weren't ready for a nice white guy, so they made her mom kill herself or something, etc., etc. And even her mom's death is very interesting because why did her mom kill herself? Because she felt shame for giving birth to Mizu, even though presumably the relationship seems non-consensual, and even if it was, it's obviously a product of the sexism and misogyny present in society, where they put all the blame and onus on the woman. So, and it's clear with how, like, for example, how Akemi is treated, for example. Okay, so Akemi's scene generally is just like kind of infuriating to watch, but like in a good way, not like an infuriating like it was terribly written, but like her dad lets this fucking little toddler run around. It's like he's like spilling like shit everywhere on the floor, and he's just like, oh ho, you'll make a fine lord one day. And Akemi's like, Akemi, you gotta fucking lock in. You can't be. Who's gonna fucking marry you if you don't like? If you're even a little bit out of line, if you're not perfect. Meanwhile, this little boy's like throwing shit around the floor while right in front of her. And it's like he's gonna be next. I'd be pissed if I was her, because like, how is this guy gonna be? How's this kid's like a toddler and he's already talking about how he's gonna be next lord, and Akemi doesn't get fucking shit. She's gonna get married off to some like asshole who she mentions died. His last wife died giving birth, and he was like, so basically she's a fucking rebound. Even worse than a rebound, she's basically just like being treated like a broodmare. Presumably, but she's gonna be treated by like a broodmare by this guy who's just gonna try to keep having her give birth until she pumps out a son, probably. So, you know, it's a miserable fucking existence, to say the least. And she can see that, so she's trying to basically get married to the person she actually likes. But also, she also mentioned she wants to be closer to her father, which her father is an asshole, but being closer to him would provide like a political / tactical advantage, because like if some shit goes down, you could potentially run to your father, or basically say like potentially go crying. I mean, he might just treat like shit anyway, but it's better than like having nobody in your corner at all. You know what I mean? Having the shitty father in corner is better than having nobody in your corner. There's also like an interesting metaphor with like teeth. Like one guy wants her, like the guy she's supposed to get like married off to wants her to blacken her teeth, but like when she's about to run away, the person who presumably looked after her since she was a child, he says like, this is a bad idea, and basically points out like, what man isn't a tyrant, and she goes, you. But earlier in that conversation, he also mentions how he used to brush her teeth. So we immediately have this interesting symbolism with one character trying to darken and cover her teeth, right? Her teeth are naturally white, some shade of white. So this guy's trying to darken and cover her teeth to prevent them from shining. But her caretaker, this old guy, was somebody who basically cleaned her teeth, removed the detritus, let them shine for what they really are. Let you see like the truth underneath the plaque, right? You can see basically past her facade. And he does do that during the scene where he basically calls her out for running away. The other men in the series, well, most of the other men, I think even her boyfriend, can't really see her for who she truly is. They're kind of just like putting ash or whatever. I don't really know what actually the substance they is to put on the teeth. I don't know if it's like supposed to be like semi-permanent or if it's supposed to be like you just do it daily. But the other men can't really see her for how she is. And I think the tooth is an interesting metaphor, because the tooth, where is the tooth located? It's in the mouth. And it's very obvious to me that Akemi's greatest power is she's a fucking killer with words. She knows exactly what to say to like hype you up, to get you feeling better about yourself. Like her boyfriend was just like, when he got shit on, he was just like he was just feeling sorry for himself. He was like, I'm a fucking failure. Your dad's not gonna blame me right now. He basically just gave up, and then she knew exactly what to say to get him back on his feet. Now she might have gone a little overboard and glazed him too hard, so he ran off. But where he would have just given up, she was basically just like, well, I mean, if you want to be technical, legally speaking, this blue-eyed samurai didn't challenge you to a duel, so it's really losing your honor. I'm like, legally speaking, and she's kind of has a point. I mean, the guy just kind of showed up and presumably, in a way, kind of jumped him. Wasn't even trying to. It probably wouldn't have fought him if Mizu didn't need to. So, and she basically she knows how to appeal to especially like men's pride and stuff. And I found that to be a very interesting character point. That she's really good with her like her mouth, and it's reflected with like how her teeth are treated. Where people want to blacken her teeth, some people want to let the teeth shine. And you might see someone's teeth lit while they're talking, for example. But back to the point. Mizu herself is a very interesting character. Obviously, she's dealing with a lot of racism and stuff, and it's not fair. But I think she's a very interesting case study in how she's a product of white colonialism and violence. And in a sense, she didn't really ask to be here, but now she's just here, and she's gonna go get revenge on her dad because I guess her dad isn't considered the like ramifications of his actions. And as I said earlier, there's an interesting like implication with like how this like the sexualization of women in not just Japanese society by other Japanese people, but also by white people, because it's implied, as I said earlier, the first guy we see, basically what some of the other people have been doing is they've been gathering basically women they consider beautiful so this guy can have sex with them, right? So as he goes from town to town on his way back, so not just while he's there, but on his way back, he plans to have like this great like the best time of his life on the way back before he leaves back to Europe. And he clearly just has no respect for Japanese culture. His painting looks great, but like he basically talked about how much he fucking hates it. He talks about what a miserable place the island is. So I'm interested to see where that goes. I mean, who else I want to? The Swordsmaster's pretty good. I mean, the Swordmaker's a pretty good character. I mean, he's blind. So how much would he treat Mizu differently if he could always see, or he could see? I don't know, but I think he knows that Mizu is a woman. I suspect he does. I mean, he points out that he can't see, so when Mizu says like I'm basically mixed race, he's like that doesn't mean shit to me because I'm blind, bro. I don't know what the fuck that means. But also, he also makes an interesting point where they're making a sword where he's like, you don't want to purify the sword too much because then it becomes brittle. And Mizu was like, wait, I thought you were supposed to like purify the sword completely. He's like, yeah, but if you purify it too much, it becomes brittle. You need like some impurities to like basically like kind of reinforce the sword, which is probably a metaphor for like, you know, Mizu being a product of like not being quote unquote pure Japanese, right? She has impurities that she cannot get rid of, but there is a world that maybe those impurities make her stronger for it. Now it depends on how this is handled, because like I said, this could easily turn into like a white savior thing. But I'm interested to see how maybe in the future, music, like how, because I think what the show is trying to say is that basically purity as a concept is overrated. It's not that, oh, Mizu is a product of like a rape, or all these white people running around raping Japanese women. Those are good things. What it's saying is that like purity isn't the only form of strength, and it's not like things that are pure are inherently stronger for it. Sometimes having a wider variety of experiences, or like more diversity, or a mixture of cultures or experiences can make something stronger. This idea that I guess the best way to put it would be like in biology. So the problem with in biology you usually want a bit of genetic diversity. The reason why is because if everything's genetically the exact same, they all have the exact same weaknesses. You see this with like bananas and stuff. So if some parasites are traveling around, or disease starts traveling around from animal to animal, or species from species, and one species is like they're all like clones of each other, they're just gonna get shit stomped by that virus, right? But if there's like some sort of genetic diversity, the species as a whole is stronger for it, because the viruses have like a wider range, be able to have like a wider range of traits, or to deal with a wider range of traits. So you won't, the entire like species just doesn't get fucking shit on, right? I know this is like probably not a satisfying ending. I just haven't finished watching this. Oh, I guess Ringo's pretty interesting. Ringo, I feel I feel bad for him. His father's obviously abusive. His father cares about him in a weird way, like where he just doesn't want him to die. But I think his father's clearly abusive. He kicks him around when he doesn't want to. And I think people, it's interesting how people kind of overlook how strong he actually is, because this guy has no fucking hands, right? And he's constantly getting kicked around with like, but he doesn't really drop the suit that often. He drops like fucking once, and some guy knocking it out of his hand. But he's constantly getting kicked around, or like people trying to see like how basically how much abuse he can take. And he actually really drops anything. And like, it is a joke at the moment. But he is, for example, surprisingly sneaky. He is somehow crafty. He somehow got out of the ropes. And I think his arc so far is interesting, where he wants to be good at something. And like I kind of get like Mizu's perspective, where like she just wants to go fucking murder her dad and the four evil white guys of the Northwest, East, and South, or whatever. She didn't plan on anyone coming with her, and she doesn't necessarily want anyone to come with her. Part of the reason might be because she might be planning to die, or might be okay with dying. But I can see why having this guy, even in a hypothetical situation where he's like the ideal person, like he's another samurai or something, he's probably annoying to have around. But I think it's interesting that how he's treated in the show, and his desire to be good at something, which is a desire we can all relate to, but I think it's especially interesting on a disabled character such as himself. Like, he just wants to be good at something, and honestly, he just needs to be tossed a bone. Like, give a guy a fucking break. And I think his perspective, like, he thought he made good noodles, which, I mean, they maybe were good for the area, but then he went and realized how much bigger the world actually is. Like, oh shit, there's better noodles than mine. And then the guy's like, oh yeah, we're only second best though. And he goes like, oh shit, these noodles are even better somehow. And then, because like he basically said, like, he told part of his selling point to Mizu originally was that, oh, I make bomb ass noodles. But then he starts realizing, like, my noodles might actually not be as good as I thought they were, because he's becoming like more privy to the world around him now that he's traveling around. And I think we can relate to that, like, to the idea of being maybe like a big fish in a small pond, where like you thought you were good at something, and then you graduate or you go to a new place and you're like, oh damn, I'm kind of not shit. And I think he's going through that too. And I think it's idea that I think it's interesting that the one thing he thought he was good at ends up being stripped away from him so early on. So it's like, so I'm interested to see what he's good at, because I could see a future, like, maybe, I don't know, he like learns some sort of sword technique that he can employ, or maybe he becomes a better noodle maker, but maybe he finds something completely different. And right now, I think his character is like very interesting in that regard. I think it's all I'm gonna say for now, because I don't want this to go over like 30 minutes. Who do we have? Yeah, I'm probably just gonna make another one when I watch the next two episodes or something. I don't know. Or maybe we'll just talk about Magic together next time, because I think there's some interesting stuff going on with Aether Drift. I'll see you next time, probably.